Hey everyone, welcome back to the It's a Mind Game podcast. My name is Jade, and today we have back on the wonderful, the well-known Miss Elyse Lawry, who I'm still questioning if I say that surname right, or Instagram as your period PT, your period hype girl. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me. It's been far too long in between catch-ups.
We were just saying before we jumped on that I think it's been about 6 months since we had a chat. So needless to say that there is just so much to say and share.
Yes, there definitely is. I can't believe how quickly 6 months has gone. It's crazy. Like it's almost May.
I know. I'm actually looking at the date. I'm like, yep, it's a week away from that. Oh my goodness. Now, the topic we decided to chat on today, we actually thought about 6 months ago. But due to the busyness of lives, we thought we'll put it on hold until we've got a good time to have a sit down and chat. And it's kind of linked into HA. It's kind of not, because it is a body image topic. And I guess the segue into it is body image and wanting to make changes to our body that comes from a well-informed, well-intended, and medically advised place. Now, I feel like I'm gasping for air as I say that, because I just want to highlight to everyone this chat is more opening the conversation around body image, and that, of course, you should always speak to any sort of professional or get medical advice when it comes to anything to do with changing your body. So with that nice build to dive in, let's talk about body image, Elyse.
Yes, well, I guess we should kick it off with what this podcast is about. And I think the easiest way to say is something that Jade and I found we had in common was we've both had our boobs done. I never know what to say. Breast implants, boobs done, like breast implant sounds very formal.
Yeah, like one of my friends used to like to call them bolt-ons. So
oh my God.
And I must
eldest
admit,
brother
when I
said
was
that.
really lean and I had them done, they looked just like that. They look like bolt-ons. But no, we decided that we wanted to bring up this topic, one, because we feel some sort of tension around it, given the position that we're in, sort of a body acceptance kind of place. And we never want to give the message that obviously boob jobs complete your life or that they make anything better, because I guess that's the exact reason why we're here talking about it today, is what our motivations were to have them done, and how we've come across a lot of women who fall into the category where kind of like dieting and having the dream body, that if they have their breasts done, that suddenly their life is complete. Everything's okay, everything's perfect, when the reality is everything's the exact same. You just now have implants. So I feel like there was a big loop to get to where we wanted to be, but there's actually a really strong census for what we're going to talk about today. So I guess let's lead into what were the foundations around you actually getting your breast implants, and how old were you? What was the process like? And then I can chime in and share my experience.
Yeah, I think that's a really good place to start. And I have never openly talked about this on my Instagram. So to any of my followers listening, this is probably very new to you. But I was quite young when I got it done. I was about, I think, 20. But I'd been thinking about it for a couple of years prior to that. And I think the catalyst for that was obviously I went on my first diet. At the time, I didn't realize it was a diet, that whole jam.
Healthy living.
Yeah, healthy living, healthy lifestyle, losing weight really quickly. And I didn't really have boobs when I was in a bigger body as a teenager. But I definitely didn't have any once I lost a lot of weight. And I think I got really self-conscious about that because a lot of my friends around me had bigger boobs, my mum, my sisters, and I just kind of felt a little bit out of place. And I think my mum picked up on that I felt self-conscious about it. Like we'd obviously have conversations, and I probably cried a few times to her about it. And, you know, she's the one who actually suggested getting my boobs done if I wanted to. And that was probably when I was about 18 or 19. So she kind of planted the seed, and it was totally up to me. But she just wanted, like, I'm pretty sure that was her way of showing her support and that she cared and she wanted to help me. Because you can only imagine, I mean, I don't have children, but obviously you have a little girl, Jade, and like if she was coming to you with these concerns and things like that, you just want to help her in whatever shape you could. And I think once mum opened my mind to that, all I could see was women with their boobs done. Like they were everywhere. I worked on cruise ships based out of America, and a lot of American women, sorry, that's probably a generalization, but a lot of women I came across on cruise ships as guests had their boobs done. And I had plenty of conversations with these women, and they were very open to telling me about their experience. Some even gave me really good advice, which we'll probably get into if I remember in a little bit. And I'm pretty sure I messaged my mum one day while I was still working abroad, and I just said, I want to get them done. I was like, you can find the surgeon, because mum had a few friends at that time that had gone through, breast cancer recovery. So they had to get their breasts removed, and then they got implants and stuff like that. So she knew of some really good friends that had some surgeons that they could recommend. And it was actually my mum that found my surgeon, booked in my consultation, my pre-op consultation, and my operation before I'd even gotten home. And I was ready to do it. I got home, I was just turned 20 or about to turn 20. And I met my surgeon. He was an absolute gem. Like, he was so thoughtful and considerate, and went through the history of breast implants, went through what would happen, what the recovery would look like. We even did like that 3D imaging. I don't know if you did that too, where it'd be like, this is what you'd look like roughly with this size and this size. And he actually said at the end of the day, because my mum had a couple of conditions, and one of them was that we get them done in Australia, and that you don't look like, you don't get a size that's unrealistic, like
too big. Yeah.
And like, I play a lot of sport, and I was playing a lot of sport at that time in my life, and I didn't want to have these massive boobs that were getting in the way. And like, I just wanted to have something there, because for me, like you mentioned earlier, it did feel like that's what I needed to finally accept where my body was at. I honestly thought, and I still remember this, that if my boobs were bigger, I would feel like my stomach was flatter. So for me, it was kind of like, this is the final piece of the puzzle. And lo and behold, it was not, because my relationship with my body didn't change. Yes, I was ecstatic, and I felt a lot more comfortable in my body, but it wasn't this body acceptance that I thought I was going to wake up with. I still had the same relationship with my body. And I think that's my biggest message that I want to get across, is like, I'm all here if you want to change something about your body and about the way that you look. I'm so here for it, and I will support it if it's coming from the right place. And when I was 20 years old, 19, 20 years old, I wasn't coming from the right place. Like, I wasn't coming from a place of already having self-acceptance and just wanting to, add something else in. It was striving for self-acceptance. And I think that's where the biggest issue comes, is if you're doing all of these things, whether it be as drastic as surgery, or whether it's just weight loss, whatever the path is that you're trying to take to find self-acceptance, if you don't work on it first, that path isn't magically going to get you there.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that is probably the most critical part about any kind of cosmetic procedure that you're going to do, because honestly, I feel the same way even about women who have Botox, or who have like cosmetic tattooing and all that sort of thing. I really do believe that if it makes you happy, and it's coming from that place where it's kind of more an accessory rather than a trophy. Like, it's not the, once I've got this, I've won at life. It's just more of a, I'm happy with this choice. I like it. It makes me smile. But again, if it didn't exist, you're still completely okay as well. And breast implants is such a big part of that dynamic, because there is that element, especially I find in your early 20s, where you think that if you look a particular way, everyone is going to love and accept you. And look, it could be the fact that we grew up with these magazines, and I'm going to say magazines because we didn't have all the social media stuff. It was very much Oxygen magazine, and oh gosh, I don't know any of, I was just obsessed with Dolly and Cosmo and all that sort of thing. But it was very like teeny body, big boobs. Yeah. So perhaps that was why the desire was there. So I guess different to you. So I had my implants done, I'm pretty sure I was 23. But I'd been questioning them from the time I was 18. So for me, gosh, what's the story there? I had absolutely no boobs while I was a gymnast, and I also had no period. And then I stopped gymnastics when I was 16. Surprise, surprise, got my period in about 6 months. And with that, I had a fuller body and all that sort of thing. Slingshot forward a couple of years, I gained a fair bit of weight and my bust was quite large. I think I got to like a D or a double D, which genetically kind of makes sense because everyone in my family, like the women, are all pretty full cup kind of gals. And then I think I must have looked at them at 20 actually, because that's when I started losing all my weight and doing the comp prep. And with the comp prep and jumping up on stage, I literally had no breast tissue left. So even when I spoke to surgeons about it, because I want to make it very clear, this was full. Yeah, so I must have been 24. It was 4 years in the making. I think I had 6 to 8 specialist appointments with 2 different surgeons because I'd go in being like, yep, I want to do this. I want to do this. And then I'd walk out being like, no, it's not the right time for me. And then I'd keep training, I keep dieting, and I'd be like, no, I really want to do this. And I think part of me was very cautious that I didn't put the implants on the pedestal as to once you've got them, everything will be okay, or like everything will be better, not will be okay, sorry. And then I think I did a photo shoot. So still dieting, training. And I sort of come to this idea, well, you know what, I actually aesthetically, I'm really happy with how I look. I did. I remember liking how I looked and thinking, and if I had the boobs as well, I would really be something else. And like you could think I'm really shallow for thinking that, but it's just that's what my thought process was. I was like, imagine what I'd be like with boobs. And part of that comes from a really vulnerable place because at that point in time, I remember actually crying to my now husband about this, being like, you know, it's so crazy. I really like how I look, but I'm such a man. Like I remember saying to him, literally, I don't have a period. And this was before I ever wanted to get it back. Right. So that wasn't even a thing. And I'd cry. And I think I could have even cried to my mom. So I'd be like, I just feel so much like a boy. Like if I don't have a bra on, like my bra literally just covered my chest, there was no filling. And even if I was to be intimate with my partner, now husband, I'd keep my bra on because it was like, I just don't want you to. And if it was to have come off, it was very much like, like I was so insecure about it. And it honestly started to make me really sad and feel really vulnerable until I met this second surgeon. Because again, I went back for another chat because my husband sort of said, well, why don't you get them done and maybe that'll bring you some joy. And I met this other surgeon who was lovely. And sort of like how you described, he talked me through everything from the beginning of the procedure to the end. He did the assessment. So for me, my implants had to sit on top of my chest because my pec muscle was really strong. And because I had very little body fat percentage, he said the recovery time for me to cut through your pec would be through the roof because the muscle fibers are so tight. And he didn't think that was a very good idea to have 3 to 4 month long recovery when I could be on top of the muscle and it's 2, 4, 6 weeks. So I think for me, they just sort of like held them in like a random stuff on bra, and he did measurements from my collarbones to my nipples, from my nipple to just under my armpits. And he actually had a scale for, given your measurements, these size will look smaller, this size will look about average, this size will look a little bit, let's say, bustier than normal, but still nothing sort of gigantic. I did choose the larger size, and it's funny because I look back now and honestly my bust is quite big as it is when I'm in a bigger body, but when I was like teeny tiny they must have been huge. So I remember my mum saying like, oh my god, Jay, they're massive, but I was like, no, I love them, which I've totally skipped a whole step, but I ended up getting them done. And I remember just waking up and obviously I was off my face on anesthetic, and the first thing I did was like grab my chest and smile at my husband and be like, I love them already. I love
Oh my God. So
because I had a full handful. And I know I was like high on anesthetic and things, but honestly, from the moment I had them done, I felt like something just clicked and I felt feminine. And I'm not saying this to anyone listening. This is honestly, this chat is very entertainment purposes only. But in my personal circumstance, where I felt so much like a man all the time for being flat chested and not having a bleed, as soon as I got them, I was like, oh my God, I feel like a woman. And I felt special and I felt confident. And you know what? I was happy to wear low cut tops. And if my bra happened to come off with my partner, I didn't care. If anything, I was proud. And for me, it was a life-changing experience. And that could sound really dramatic, but it forever shifted my confidence. And I don't have a day that I regret it. And even my husband, if you ask him about it, will say the confidence that come from you the moment you had that surgery done, he said something in you changed. And not in a you look better or anything like that kind of way, as in like energetically. He goes, you stood taller, you were proud, you were happy. And he goes, and you never had a reason not to be in the first place. He goes, but something just changed. And we'll dig into this later because I mentioned explant surgery. And that was one of my husband's comments on the idea of an explant, which is just remember the confidence they brought you, and not saying you're dependent on it, but they have shifted something. I've talked enough. Elyse, I'm sorry. You go.
No, you're fine. You definitely had a journey, which it's just really interesting because when you first started talking about how like you had, you know, several different appointments and you're like, I'm going to do this, then you'd walk out. What was your recovery like? Did you you were in quasi recovery for a while, weren't you? Or not?
My HA recovery journey. Yeah. So I was like 3 months of pure research, 11 months reduced training, eating lots. Reduced training as in 4 or 5 strength sessions a day, no actual cardio. And then, yeah.
So like, I just find it very, just like our stories are very contrast and relate to our HA recoveries in a way. Not like saying either of them are worse or better than each other, but like purely I walked in, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. Walked out, yeah, I'm going to do it. I did it. And as soon as I found out about HA, that was my attitude. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And I started it before I had time to like really think about what I was doing. So like the next thing that I'll probably say is I mentioned I got some really good advice from these women that I spoke to throughout that kind of 2-year period of like, yeah, I think I'm going to do this, but I want to know a bit more. One of the women actually said to me, and I'll never forget this because it's so true, and I'll be interested to see if you ever experience this, but she said a few days after the operation, there is a good chance when you're coming down from all of the anesthetic and all of that, and you're sitting there and you're looking at your boobs, you'll probably wonder, what the hell have you just done? You will probably feel overwhelmed with emotion and possibly even a bit of guilt and regret. And I kid you not, 3 days after I got out of the shower and I was sitting on my bed in my towel.
You're having a literal like come down though.
I just broke down. But I was so glad that this woman had told me about it, because if I hadn't have known to kind of like,
you would have stayed in the guilt.
I would have stayed in the guilt, and I would have been like, oh my God, I need to get rid of these. Like these, what have I done? I've just ruined my body. Like, so it was just, yeah, it was really interesting because the same thing kind of happened with me in recovery. I just jumped straight in, not really thinking about it. Couple weeks in, when the weight was starting to kind of climb up and I was feeling uncomfortable, I was sitting there thinking, what am I doing? Like, and I just love how your story with your implants.
But it's so much the same though, and I've actually never made that correlation, so I'm so glad you're bringing this to the surface. But one of my weaknesses in character is I'm so scared of other people's perceptions that it does hold me back from making some bigger choices despite knowing it's the best for me. So and it, like for HA, it was probably a bit of a setback, but in regards to my implants, I'm kind of grateful because it really made me think long and hard about why I wanted it, how much I wanted it, and were the thoughts reasonable, or were they me being just a silly 20-year-old? Because that was actually something I said to myself. Like, are you just being silly? Are you just wanting something grand to look forward to? Like, what is this? Like, let's get really specific about it. But also people's perceptions, because as much as I liked my physique at this point in time, I still didn't like other people looking, if that makes sense. I don't want you to look because you might see something you don't like, or maybe you'll identify something that I need to work on more, or I don't know. It was very, what are they going to say and think? And then if I go get my boobs done, my chest is going to like literally quadruple in size overnight, and people aren't going to sort of have a look, because honestly, there was a big difference. I'd love to get the photos off my surgeon actually as the before and after, because I'm not over dramatizing when I say I was like so ridiculously flat. I was just a nipple, which is strange because I was so big busted beforehand. And even the surgeon said, he goes, the good thing is your skin's going to have more give, because when we put the implant in, it has been that size before. So he said it was very unlikely I'd have stretch marks. And that was true. I actually had no stretch marks at all. Which, like, even if I did, I think I would have just been like, I don't care because I really like them.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, a big part of that was I wasn't sure about the attention. And gosh, even thinking about HA side of things is, despite how much I wanted it, I was still worried about what others would think. And much like weight gain, no one cares. Like, people might have inquisitive questions about them, like, oh my gosh, you had them done. Who was your surgeon? Did it hurt? How long was the recovery? What size did you get? But it's very like just really logical questions. It's not you got an implant. It's nothing like that. There's nothing sassy. There's no tone attached. There's no nothing. But much like the weight gain process, I was so scared of this judgment, and I didn't cop any judgment, to be honest. Like, people noticed, and I was PTing at the time, so I took 2 weeks off PT. And when I come back, I had to say to my clients, I can tell you what weights to load up on the bars, but you need to lift it because I can't lift anything yet because I've just had surgery. But that was kind of a nice entrance into letting people know, because I don't know, kind of like my HA story where I put a full disclaimer on my social media, like, just so you know, people, I'm intentionally gaining weight. I was like, hey, just so you know, we're training a bit different because I'm recovering. So that kind of helped in a weird way. But yeah, no, it's so funny. I never drew those correlations before, but you're right. There's actually such a direct similarity between the processes of both of those.
It's very interesting. Yeah, it kind of really stood out to me while you were talking about yours. And I was like, I'm pretty sure your recovery was a bit like that.
Yeah. And I just think about it too, because like the surgeon said to me, no exercise for at least 4 weeks. And a lot of that is because of bleeding. If you happen to increase your heart rate too much, and obviously there's some pretty extensive stitches, and don't get me wrong, they heal beautifully. Like, I can barely even tell where the seam was for my implants now. He did such a beautiful job, but there's a lot of guidelines based on recovery. And honestly, I didn't listen to a thing. I was in the gym 2 days later. Yep, there was little old me with big boobies sitting on the leg extension being like, this doesn't hurt my chest. I can do it in my hands. Leg extension, standing hammy curls, and I think I did some leg press super light. Doesn't count if it's super light. But, I remember just sitting in the gym in this massive hoodie. And I think one of John's friends went up to him at the gym being like, oh, Mrs. All right, she's training a bit weird today. He goes, oh, yeah, she had her boobs done, He goes, oh, that's great, good on her. But yeah, another thing as well, like, I just had surgery and I couldn't even give myself a couple of weeks off. I just had to be there.
Well, it's probably because you didn't, it was an elective surgery, right? It's like nothing was quote unquote wrong with you, and you weren't sick, you weren't. So like, I think in our heads, it's like, well, we're fine. We can, like, our body doesn't need time to rest and recover because there was nothing wrong.
And like at this point in time too, I don't even think I was afraid of weight gain because I was so regimented with my food. I think I might have just taken out a snack. Oh no, actually, it might not have even been that. At that point in time, I think I was very much just keep eating the same because your body's doing a lot of healing. Like, it's going to need the energy. So whatever you're not training. So I kind of made it up. But I don't even remember having the thought of I must go to the gym because otherwise I'm going to get fat, or I don't even think it was any of that. I just saw John packing. Oh, it was a Saturday morning to go to the gym. And I was like, no, I'll just come with you. Maybe I'll just walk on the treadmill. And of course you start on the treadmill and then you end up on leg press. But thankfully I didn't hurt myself and my surgery did heal really well. But, just looking back, even though I saw no problem with it at the time, if anything, I remember feeling like I was doing great because I was told to sit on the couch, and instead here I am with stitches and literally like a bound chest. Is that what you call the bandages? Because it was really tight. No, it wasn't. It was a tubey grip. Sorry, I lie. I had a tubey grip on at that point. But I think because I was so swollen still, because they weren't their normal size yet, they were so swollen. So anyone listening, when you get them done, even though you pick whatever size you choose, oh my goodness, they're so much bigger. I remember looking down and being like, did someone put balloons in my chest? Because they kept growing for like 3 days. 3 days after, swollen. They got bigger and bigger, that my skin almost felt like plastic. And I didn't have the breakdown you had with the what have I done, but I do remember thinking, I hope the swelling goes away, because right now they are too much. I love them, but they're like easy tiger.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I remember my surgeon actually told me, he was like, now for the first week or so, they're going to be bigger than what they actually are because they're swollen. He's like, a lot of women come back to me because they're disappointed when they drop, because they wanted them to be
the bigger size.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I was like, I could definitely see how that was a possibility, because I kind of got used to them being like right up here, and I was like, oh, they're so perky, I love them. But then, yeah, you're right, like the stretching, and it just felt really tight and like warm. I remember just being
hot.
So
hot. Me too.
And obviously that's our body's way of healing of what it's just gone through. But
did you feel really heavy as well?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, like I was shocked at the idea of hunching, how much that was there, because my chest felt so heavy. And even though I'd had a big bust in the past, it really stood out to me. And I'm going to hand over the mic to you. I just want to say one more thing before I forget. But while I've been so happy with this decision ever since I made it, there actually was one time where I not quite regretted it, but I was second guessing, actually twice. When I started doing CrossFit. So before that, I was really bodybuilding focused, and my cardio was either Stairmaster or it was, supersetting the crap out of everything. And I started CrossFit, where there's running and there's jumping and there's chest to bars, and I'm pretty fit, I'm pretty strong, and suddenly I've got these massive cans, and these movements are hard, not because they're physically hard, but because they bounce around so much. So I remember having a sports bra on and like 2 or 3 crop tops to like stick them to my chest as much as I could, because I wanted to perform. Like, hey, I can jump faster than this, and I can do burpees better, and I can do da-da-da-da-da-da. And these bolt-ons, because that's at the time that was stuck in my head, like these bolt-ons are holding me back. Imagine how good I'd be if I didn't have them. So that was probably the only time, other than we'll talk explant soon, that I actually started to question it. And it was purely on athletic performance. I was like, well, how good could I be if I didn't have to worry about them bouncing around? But the two tied in pretty close together. I started CrossFit pretty soon after that surgery, so I was already still trying to adjust. Now, if someone said, go for a run, go do burpees, go do squat jumps, it feels normal. But at the time, it's amazing how much you remember when you start talking about things.
Yeah.
I remember, and I'd love to know if you felt this, because no one else I've spoken to has ever experienced this. And so many women I know have had implants at all different ages. But I literally, and maybe it was because I was so lean, I'm not sure. Tell me your thoughts. But it was as though so you've got your implant, right? Mine was just the silicone shiny one. I didn't get them that one. But it was as though if I moved, I could physically feel the implant touching the sheet of my muscle. So if it moved, I felt, best way to describe it, imagine if you had a stress ball, right? And you put paint on it, and then you press the stress ball against the wall and then drew a circle, and you could see the paint trail of where the ball was. That's what my implants felt like in my chest. I felt like I could feel them moving, and it was really annoying. Like, I did not like it. And I told my surgeon, and it's the first he'd heard about it, but he said they look fine. Everything's structurally okay. Just wait and see. And it did go away. Like, I don't experience that now, but it drove me a little bit crazy. I'm like, I don't want to feel this. Like, I don't need to.
Yeah, I feel like I definitely can relate to that.
Oh, thank goodness.
The feeling of them not being in the right place. And then also I got very anxious about them, especially like the first few weeks after recovery. Like I had like a special compression bra or whatever that was made for me.
Yeah.
And then like you're not meant to lie on your side. You should really try and lie on your back and don't lie on your front and all that sort of stuff. And like I think I just heightened that feeling for myself about being worried that because I had like and I'm sure maybe yours are the same, like a teardrop shape. So even if they were to move, the weight would bring them back to where they're meant to be.
No, I went full round.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I had like this teardrop shape that had tiny little holes in it. So apparently like 60 to 80% of my scar tissue would actually cling into the implant itself, so it shouldn't move. But during that healing process, I definitely, and it is such a foreign thing that you're not used to, so I can totally relate to how it would have like it felt, because it was just like would
have been much the same, I think, because mine was smooth and round, so essentially no matter which way mine spin, they're always going to look the same, where even though mine, they probably weren't even spinning. It was probably just like if I went into a chest press or I went into a shoulder press, just that general movement pattern, the muscle contraction maybe rubbed on the implant. So it was more muscle than implant. But the way you described that teardrop and the fact that they could sort of sway, one, you're not used to having weight in your chest. Two, you've actually got a shape that you could feel because it's got that sort of tip at the bottom. So I feel like you would know more what I'm saying than others that I've spoken to.
It definitely makes sense. And I think something you said, because I really wanted to mention this too, in talking about like moments of almost regret or do I really need these anymore? I had one of those moments, apart from the little mental breakdown from the emotional breakdown from coming down from the surgery, which is totally normal. It was during HA recovery, actually. I'd gotten my first recovery period, and then I had to wait. So I got my first recovery period, what was it, like 52 days all in, air quotations for anyone listening to the podcast. And then I had to wait like 60 something days for my second period. So I actually had to wait longer for my second than my first, which was really difficult. Because I guess once you get your first, you can kind of have like this timeline of like, okay, so in 28 days, I should have my next one. And then 28 days after that, I'll be back into exercise. And like, just kind of the mindset you're in after your first recovery period is definitely not the mindset you're in, after your 7th or 8th recovery period, right? You've still got like, your body may be physically recovering, but the mental side may not be where it needs to be. So I created this timeline in my head, and then obviously I get to like cycle day 30 and still no signs of ovulation, and I'm starting to freak out, and I get to cycle day 45 and I was like, this is the average time that someone would get their second period. Like, like I don't want to be just average, like I've always been better than average sort of thing, like mentality.
No, I hear you. I'm smiling. So I'm like,
and in that moment, I think I had a day or two, and I remember talking to my partner, and who was on the other side of the world at the time, being like, I think I have to get them out. And I was seeing all of these things about breast syndrome illness. And I was like, this is the reason my period hasn't come back. I was like, this is the reason. And I really did toy with the idea. Like I Googled how much it was to get, like on average, to get them removed. And I looked at the price and I was like, maybe it's not worth it. Maybe obviously, like maybe it's not the case. And then I ovulated a couple of days later, and I got my second recovery period, and I was like, I just went down this massive spiral of like my body. And I did truly feel for a while there that it was, my body's way of telling me, hey, we don't want these anymore. But then I think it was also like me grasping at straws instead of just gaining more weight and giving my body what it needed. It's like the whole
I've tried everything, so it must be this. And it's like HA recovery is trying everything and waiting for it.
and, you know, gaining more weight after your first recovery period, if that's what your body needs. Because like after my first recovery period, I definitely I didn't change anything, but my mentality definitely shifted from, oh, I didn't gain as much weight as I thought I needed, so I don't need to gain any more weight because I've already got one period. And I think subconsciously that held my body back from moving forward, because I was resistant to the idea of, and like that really just goes to show what my relationship with my body was like at that time. I still wasn't accepting of it, because I didn't.
You weren't trusting the process. You're trying to blame something external. Yeah.
And I didn't think I needed to gain any more weight. And I kind of, by thinking that, it's also thinking gaining more weight would be bad in a roundabout way. So there's only the one time that I've really regretted it, and I kind of snapped myself out of it. And I think that's another reason why we wanted to talk about it, because I did see a lot of things about breast syndrome illness, and I'm not a medical professional and I'm not going to dive into all of that, but I think I also wanted to talk to you about it, to share positive experiences with them, because I saw a lot of negativity towards them, and I was like, well, they've been really great for me and I've never had an issue with them. So it is definitely personal, and I'm not saying that breast syndrome illness,
breast implant illness,
thank you, it's such a mouth twister.
No, actually, no. So that one of the girls on the podcast, she come on and she had breast implant illness. I'll probably link that detail into these notes, actually, guys, if you want to go back and take a look. But she was so sick. And within, you know, an hour of having them taken out, I'm pretty sure she said the whites of her eyes were turning yellow and they were like white. Or it was something really obvious within the first hour. And then her health continued to improve. She did end up getting a period back later, but it's really hard to decide what was related to what, because she did get so sick that who's to say the stress wasn't, you know, all the illnesses attached to them. And it's so hard to tell. And I think because breast implant illness is so, I'm just going to say up and coming in the medical field, because a lot of doctors still do not recognize it as a condition. Some do. That if we are in a position where it's like, we were doing everything, where the heck is my period? I just want it back. And then you read breast implant illness, it's so easy to go, aha, that it's them. And I say that because I'm pretty sure that entered my mind once or twice as well. The only thing that snapped me out of it was being like, you literally have no other symptoms other than a missing period. Like a lot of these women have got chronic fatigue, brain fog, rashes, literally sick, body aches, can't eat. The list is intense. And I think I know 3 people that have had breast implant illness, but I probably know 20 who have had breast implants. So it's still not common, but I feel sorry for the women that have experienced it. And if they share their story, they get laughed at, because it's like, no, they had a firsthand experience, and no offense, but you don't have to agree with it to decide whether it's real or not. That is their lived experience. As soon as those things were taken out, they were feeling better. As soon as they got put in, they got sick. So I feel like I'll go on a tangent about that. But I just find it really interesting how people want to judge medical conditions when it's like, literally, this is this person's lived experience. How can you critique that? Anyway.
No, I agree.
But I think it's unfair. And so explant stories, actually 2 things. So when I do question my implants, there's a couple of times where I'm in like a really negative space, and you know, as a sole trader, sometimes if there's cancellations and things like that, you can get a bit in your head about finances. Well, I do anyway. And I don't need to. It's just like my go-to, seeing as though my body isn't my go-to anymore. It's finances. Just subbing one thing for the other. I'm working on it.
We're always a work in progress.
But sometimes, and it's not often, I'll be like, well, if you didn't spend 10 grand on your chest, maybe you'd have some more money lying around. And that's the sassy tone of it. Like literally, it's not a, you know, there's money on your chest. It's like, no, hey lady, you should think your assets. But if anyone was wondering, like I had changed from $10,000 for my breast implants. They were done in Melbourne at St. Vincent's Private Hospital with a fabulous surgeon. And I'm purely saying that because so many women go overseas for these implants and have horrible things happen on their return, and the price difference isn't that much. I was never going to Thailand for mine, and I don't judge anybody who does. But I did research the prices of both, and it's like, it was at the time, it was maybe a $2,000 difference, but the $2,000 meant that if I need to see my surgeon 2 days later, 5 months later, 3 years later, and I literally saw him like a couple of months ago, which is like 5 years later, 6 years later, he's still there. So for me, that's worth the extra money. Have you ever had that pop in your head? The money?
No, not really.
No,
I
you're
guess
crazy,
also,
Jane.
no, you're not crazy at all. I think also too, I was in a bit of a different position. I was like, I don't know if I'll share this, but I'll share it anyway.
Dun, dun,
Dun, dun, dun. It's not that bad. It's obviously I was quite young when I got them done and I was working abroad. So I was earning pretty good money because I didn't have to pay for any like rent, food, board, nothing like that. It was US currency back to Australian currency, tax-free.
Yeah, so it worked in your favor.
It worked in my favor. And then it also worked in my favor that my parents went 50% in with me.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I made the joke. I was like, well, Mum, it was after the fact that they were like, we will help you with this.
Yeah.
But I made the joke. I was like, well, Mum, it makes sense because it's your reason I didn't end up with any kind of thing, like just joking about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I definitely had the help. So I think
But you know what, even if I had have gone 50-50 with my parents, the same thought would still pop in. The actual number amount has got nothing to do with it. It's just the idea to put some negativity on myself, and I'm already in a bit of a shaky space, as we all do. But no, I mean, I don't know, I just think with anything like that, whether it be, implants or a course or something like that, if there's people legitimately out there who want to help you for all the right reasons, I think it should be okay to accept help.
for sure.
And oh goodness, what was I going to say? I totally went blank. But no, I just felt your resistance in sharing that story. And then as I heard it, I'm like, oh my gosh, girl. Like, doesn't matter.
I don't know. It was a very long time ago. And, I think something that I wanted to mention too, like I'm obviously very open about all of my life experiences at this point. Like if you ever told 15-year-old me that I would be on Instagram talking about the importance of periods and
my goodness no.
Like I would have laughed at you. I would have been like, no way. But I am a very open person, which is why I wanted to have this conversation. And whenever it's come up with friends or with people that I've worked with on cruise ships or whatever, and even now at work in the gym, like whenever it comes up, I'm very open about the fact that my boobs are fake, and no one, like, everyone's shocked.
Because it's so normal now as well.
But everyone's shocked because they don't look fake. And that was, one of the conditions along with getting it done in Australia that my parents said to me. And, just getting it done in Australia because like you said, if we needed to go back to the surgeon, he's there. You're getting it done in your home soil. Like you've got medical cover if anything goes wrong. Like this is just for them, gives them peace of mind. Like they didn't want their 20-year-old daughter flying to some random country to meet a surgeon
on the day.
So everyone's experience is their own, but they were just kind of the conditions, and I'm grateful for them, for sure. But I think with this conversation, I've been trying to figure out how to like approach my audience with it, because while I'm so open about it, I do feel like because we are in this body acceptance space, I don't want people to look at it and be like, oh, well, like, do you really have body acceptance? And I want to make it really clear that at the time I didn't. And I would still do that surgery 1,000 times over because of how it's made me feel. But if I was to go back now, I would be doing it from a completely different place with my relationship with my body. And, like I said before, the whole point of me sharing and you sharing this message is we're so here for anyone who wants to make these changes for their body, but making it well informed and making it from a good and healthy place with your relationship with your body, not as some like magic fix to finally.
That's the key though, isn't it? It's like, it's not a magic fix. It's not going to change your relationships, your work life, your like I will openly say I felt a lot more confident after having them done, but I was still self-conscious with the boobs, if that makes sense. So even though I was so happy in my body, I still didn't want other people looking and judging, which was something there before, after, during, all of it. But I do find that the hindsight perspective really interesting. So another time when I questioned actually having an explant, which I'll lead into my catch up with my surgeon, is that after going through the whole HA recovery process and like breastfeeding Casima and things like that, I was sort of just, so my boobs have legitimately changed shape since breastfeeding. So like in my husband's bed, he goes, they just look like really well-shaped natural boobs where they used to look fake, right? Because I liked that look. And over time, that sort of changed as I gained weight anyway, because it got softer. So you used to see like the pec muscle and then the implant. I was pretty like literally bolt on. Oh, not too much though. Anyway, I wish I had photos. Like actually, that goes to show how much, as much as I was happy with myself, there was still a discontentment because I don't think I've got any photos of me around that time. And that there's years of that, of me being lean with big boobs. I don't think I've got any photos. But that also reinforces the fact that I very much did it for me because I didn't need to take photos to be like, look at me now. It wasn't that way. I was just like, hey, I'm here, everybody. This is fun. I really like my outfit. You know what I mean? So I wasn't in photos for some reasons that you could say negative, but I also wasn't in photos for some reasons that are really great. I was just out there enjoying everything and having fun. But yeah, so after breastfeeding, I sort of thought, oh, my boobs are made for such better things. Like I literally just fed my child. And I think for the first time ever, I was so completely and utterly without like one eyelash out of place, so grateful for my body just in its own unique form that I kind of felt sad that I put the implants in, even though I've been so happy with that decision since I got them. But I remember looking in the mirror being like I've literally fed a child for the past couple of months and they're holding plastic. Like, and it just made me sad. And I thought, oh, maybe it's time for them to go. And at that point in time, as you said, it's weird how things start popping up. So I'm looking on Instagram and I think is it Nova, the Fit Cover Australia woman? She's amazing. I think she had an explant. And I think my friend pointed out that Georgie Stevenson might have had
Yeah,
I don't know. There was just a couple of Fitspros on there that are all like, get them out, get them out, get them out. And I'm watching their stories about the procedure and all this sort of thing. And I'm like, this is a sign. And then I went back to my surgeon. So if I don't have a bra on, I could see like not quite a bubble, but there was just something there. And I didn't trust going to my GP for them to assess my breasts I thought there was a lump because I was getting pain there as well. And I thought if I go to a GP and they check them, I actually don't trust the GP because maybe they're not used to seeing implants. And I want my surgeon to have a look, have a feel and be like, no, this is very specific to breast implants, or no, you need to go have an ultrasound or a mammogram or whatever it might be. With the intention of asking the question about explants. So factoring in, I'm going into this appointment purely for a lump more than anything else. And also, I never asked about explants when I got them put in. And I honestly encourage anyone to ask this question because here's the thing, your implants these days are probably going to last 20 years. But at some point, you need to decide whether you put in new implants or you take them out. And I never thought that far ahead. I literally thought until they go in and then I'll live happily ever after. I never thought about, well, am I going to have them done again when I'm like 45 and then have them done again when I'm 65? Am I going to keep them until I'm 85? No, really. Like who's going to have surgery at 85?
I'm going to be real open and honest.
Never thought of it?
I never thought of it because
right?
I said to my surgeon, I was
it's actually a high maintenance procedure.
Well, I said to my surgeon, will I need to come back in like 10 years time? And he's like, no, they should be good. If you ever have any problems, come back. And I just kind of assumed that was like the technology at the time that I got them done, like the technology, like the type of implant.
No, but you're right about the technology though, because they used to last about 10 to 15. At the time I got mine done, which I actually think our timelines are pretty similar. There was new tech, so mine are Johnson & Johnson, and I've got a batch number for them and all that. It's amazing. They come with a certificate of genuine, well, because if something ever goes wrong and defects, they can contact you. But they said we can't legally say it because we haven't got the case studies, but what we've created now, they should last you 20, possibly 25 years. And I heard that and it's like, oh, that's a lifetime away. And I didn't think anything else. Like I didn't. And in hindsight, I wish I had asked that question, because at some point it's like, well, do you replace them or do you get them taken out? Either way, it doesn't matter. Doesn't
really
matter.
Good question.
But explant surgery is actually quite extensive though. Like, you've got to have drainage tubes, they've got to take out scar tissue, they've got to somewhat expose open tissue so that it can regrow. It's a big deal. It's probably a bigger deal than getting them put in.
I have to say, my boobs are hurting right now. As you're like, seriously, they're sore.
And it's a pretty intense procedure. And that being said, women go in for a day procedure, maybe overnight. They go home and they're fine. I'm just saying, compared to a slice on top of the muscle, go home, drainage tubes and things it's more than what I thought. So,
well, I don't know about you, but when I had mine put in, I had drainage tubes for a week or so.
No, I didn't. So he said I might need them, but it's just dependent on the bleeding at the time of like suturing, and mine didn't bleed that much, so I didn't have any. I have had a drainage tube for a lump I had removed under my arm though, and that wasn't pleasant at all. So yes, to all the ladies who have had drainage tubes, they're not. I give you a cuddle. So I went back and saw my surgeon to be like, tell me about this, like, Anyway, he's a lovely man, by the way. I just want to highlight, this man is absolutely lovely, and I've always felt so comfortable in his environment, like in his space and in his company. So as you know, you pretty much get in, you have a chat while you're there, and then you take your top off, they have a look, they take some more photos. And it's really interesting because I haven't seen him in years, and now I felt so comfortable to do that. And a few things that he said was, one, breastfeeding has caused a shift in the implant, so he would highly recommend, and he told me to pull my leggings down, which I didn't expect. I'm expecting a top off only, and I had a G-bang on underneath. And he said, oh, can you pull your pants down for me? And I was like, oh, okay, pull my pants down. He's grabbed my inner thighs and said, yep, so we can take some of the fat from here, we can sculpt it on top, and then you'll have that really full breast again. And I kind of had like a giggle in my head, because I'm like, oh my gosh, how easy was it for him to say, pull your pants down? I'm just like, okay. But my thighs have always been my sensitive spot. So my stomach has always stayed somewhat leaner than the rest of my body, if that makes sense. Like, it's not lean, but if I hold fat anywhere, it's in my legs, and I don't like people knowing it. But yeah, no, he
also grabbed, a female.
He grabbed,
like that is where we store our weight.
He pinched the fat and he said, yep, so we can pop it up here, we'll smooth it over, and then you'll have that really full bust again. He goes, we've got a decent amount of stores that we can work with there. So essentially just said we can use your fat thighs to make bigger boobs. Right. And I kind of just giggled, because honestly, I did not go into this appointment being like, make my boobs perfect again, which shows the confidence I have in my body right now. Because if I had have heard that feedback a couple of years ago, I would have been like, oh my God, he's disgusted by me. He saw all the fat on my legs. He thinks my boobs are disgusting. He just wants to fix me. Oh my God, I'm so gross. That would have been what happened. Instead, I was like, he wants to like clay model me, right? And then I sort of sat down, he goes, so I can draw up a quote for that procedure if you want to. And I said, oh, no, look, honestly, I was mainly here just to make sure the lump's okay. I hope to have another child, so I'm really not going to do anything until I'm done having kids. But with that in mind, could you tell me about an explant? He goes, why would you want an explant for? And I said, well, at some point in time, I'm either going to get them like rejigged, or I want them taken out. And he goes, you do realize that with the physique you've got now, if you take them out, you look like a man. And I was like, yeah. And smiled. And he said, so do you want them taken? He goes, I don't recommend you get them taken out. And I said, no, that's okay. He goes, so do you want me to draw up a quote for the fat injection thing? I said, no, honestly, I was mainly just coming for the lump, making sure that's okay. He goes, and then he said, no, unfortunately, breastfeeding hasn't been kind to you. So that little skin thing that you're seeing, he goes, you've actually lost breast tissue from breastfeeding rather than gaining it. He goes, it's one of God's cruel jokes. And I just went, oh, okay. I said, but I was able to breastfeed, so I'm really happy about that. I said, thank you so much for your time. And I shook his hand. No, I didn't shake his hand. COVID, we didn't shake hands. We had masks on. Thank you for your time, goes, come back when you know what you want to do. I was like, yeah, cool, no worries. Walked out. And so just to reiterate, any previous timeline, I would have probably been in a panic attack in my car because everything about that appointment was, you are not worthy. And instead, I went back to my car and I laughed because I'm like, oh my goodness, I actually felt sorry for him. And here's why. Because I'm there looking at my body being like, hey, I'm this cool female that does all these wonderful things, and I'm so happy about that. And he's looking at me like a Barbie doll going, how can I make you the perfect shape? And I've told a few people this story and they're all shocked, like, oh my God, how dare he talk to you like that? Blah, 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 blah. And I get that to someone who's insecure, 100%, you could have sent them on a horrible, horrible experience. But also being accommodating to his job. And his job is to structure something you'd see in an airbrushed magazine. And because I could see that, because of the confidence I guess I've got in myself and security, when all of that happened, all I got from it was, I'm sad that all you could see of my body was how to make it an art form. But at the same token, that's your job. So I'm really happy for you because that's what you see. And that's great. But yeah, that's my story that I couldn't wait to share with you because it was confronting. That it was so cool that I didn't care. Like, even now, I'm not even emotional. I'm giggling. Like,
I know, it's like gobsmacking. Like, it's just the experience. Like, I just can't wrap my head around all of, like, it's just,
there's a few layers, isn't it?
Oh, there's a lot there. And I mean, like, it's just, that and was
also
worth waiting a couple of weeks to hear. If you've watched my reaction,
is because, and I said this to my husband, I'm like, I'm not sure if he knows yet or if he remembers from my notes, but of course I know I'm going to look like a man without them. Like, that's why I got them in the first place. And, you know, I'm a much fuller body now. So me without implants is going to be so much flatter than little me without implants. So I don't know, a few takeaways from that is, one, really good assessment of how cool I am in my own body. Two,
yeah, props to you.
Yeah, like it was actually, I felt more proud of it walking out to my car.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, that was pretty intense. And like,
it
here
would
I
have
am being like wanting to give him a cuddle and be like, oh, it's okay.
It would have been empowering for you to it was almost like a real test of how far you've come with your whole, you know, not even just HA recovery, but just the whole journey you've been, like, that we all go through when we go through recovery, because there's so many different facets of it. And it's just a really, like, it was a great test, and it's really shown you that all the work that you've put in to get to this point with the relationship with yourself is worth it.
No, absolutely, because it didn't shake me at all. And like I said, if anything, I felt more compassion for him, being like, I'm sad that all you see is what you can like amp up, when I'm looking from a place of like, look at the function of this thing, like look at all the things I'm doing with this beautiful body. But again, anyone who is about to go see a plastic surgeon, know that like that is their job, to create like a picture perfect Barbie kind of looking thing, which is cool. That's why we employ them. That's all good. But just, I think it would be inappropriate to judge him based on his comments when it's his job to do that. You know what I mean? Because there's two sides of it. There's a side of like, wow, how dare he? But the other side is, I literally paid him money to say what's going on with them. And he's gone, well, let's fix them. Even though you know what I mean? Yeah.
I think I might be making a big assumption here, but I'm willing to make it that most of the women that walk through that door are coming to him wanting this magic fix for their relationship with their body. They're wanting to change all of these things. Like I was sitting there, you know, at 20 years old, thinking that this was the magic solution to all of the issues with my body. And I was happy to hear what needed to be changed when it came to my
so I wonder
chest.
because I'm purely thinking this question based on my first appointments with him, given we're going in there searching for, so for you thought it would be a bit more of the icing on top. For me, it was more of a accessory I'm really going to enjoy. Still somewhat similar though. Do you believe if you were to listen to that appointment again in the mind that you have now, it would have been perceived the same way? Because the way you described the appointment, I described mine the same. He explained everything to me. He was so kind. He showed me this. He did that. We talked about this and da 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 da. But is that because they fed the vulnerability we had? Or was it genuinely a really informative, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
what made it okay?
Yeah.
Because I look back to that appointment and go, I wonder if I went in there now and he was like, so we can create these perfect breasts and we could do this. I'd be like, oh, look, they're not perfect, but they're pretty bloody good. You know what I mean? Because my thoughts are different. Where at the time when I went in there, I was like, I hate them. Like, I don't even want to take my bra off. And then this magician sort of saying, we can take the bra off. And it's like, oh, yeah. Sorry, I've never thought of it until we just started talking about it. But is the appointment that great because of what we were experiencing in the moment, or because it was genuinely a very helpful, informative appointment?
And it's probably a bit of both, to be honest.
Yeah, probably is.
If you're with a good surgeon, like they should be really informative. They should know their stuff. Yeah,
actually, that's probably a good thing maybe to just wrap up on our conversation, because I know we could talk for days and days. We might even just do a part 2 sequel of like Q&As for boob jobs. No, because I feel like it's such a big conversation. Super quick though, were yours on top of the muscle, under the muscle?
On top.
Yours are on top as well.
Yeah, my mum had some friends that got them under the muscle and then later got them taken out and put them on top, because some of them were quite fit, and when they would like flex their muscle and stuff, you would see push
that's one of the reasons he said to me as well. And actually, interesting enough, in this appointment, he said if we were to go back in and do them again, he goes, I'd be putting it under the muscle. And I actually said I wouldn't follow through with the procedure if you wanted to do that. And just, yes, they're medical professionals, but feel free to question their advice, because for me, it's a non-negotiable. I do not want to cut through my muscle. I don't. I'll gladly stick it on top and cut through some skin, but I would much rather have an explant personally than I just don't want to cut through my muscle. For me, that's a bit too far for cosmetic. But again, all to their own, more for the point of you have the right to ask these kinds of questions.
100%. And that comes back to HA recovery. If you're sitting in a doctor's office and you don't quite understand what you're being told or what your next step of action is, question it. You know, they should be able to give you all the answers that you need. And if that current professional isn't doing that, try and find another one who will give you the answers. And help you.
And also you have every right to have multiple appointments, so as I said, I think I had 6 or 8 appointments between 2 surgeons. I saw one and then I ended up going with one of the other people in the same consultation room though. But I'm so glad those things worked out the way they did, because it really added to the experience. But as you said, whether it be HA, whether it be implants, whether it be, gosh, any kind of medical condition you're going through, you have every right to ask all of the questions you have and ask them repeatedly until you understand. And if the person you're speaking to is making you feel like you can't, either talk to them about that or, see other people.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you've got to be the advocate for your own health. That's the one thing I've learned from recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, I feel like even though we've talked about implants, it's been quite an interesting conversation about the mental transformations, because we had different experiences from our initial motivations, and yet we've questioned having them or not having them. I guess to close it all off, if you were to need implants, say tomorrow or the next day, what do you think you'd choose, implant or explant? And this is not as a recommended advice thing. I'm just curious as to, sorry, you can totally ask me the same thing back.
I've never really thought about it, but just from this chat, it would be really interesting to see what my relationship with my body would be like if I got them out.
See, I love that, because as much as I was looking into it, and this is where his, I'm going to say cold words were really beneficial, because when he said you're going to look like a man without them, that was my biggest insecurity that honestly he helped me with. And even though I'm looking in the mirror being like, I breastfed and this is amazing and all this is great, I'm not looking at the side that made me want them. I'm looking at the side where I'm actively have a full cup going, these things are amazing, not the vulnerable me with a flat chest. And after that appointment, I was so like walking into that appointment, I was pretty certain that in 5 years' time, I was going to be having an explant and like a tidy up. But then I left that appointment really thinking about things. And I actually think that I changed to the other side where it's like, no, I think once I've had kids, I'll get them done like one more time if I need to. If I don't need to, I'll just keep them the same till forever. But yeah, despite all the body confidence that I have and how proud of myself that I am and the functionality of my body, I am not going to lie, but if I have a really nice bra on and a really nice top and I have a bit of a cleavage, I do feel really feminine. Like it makes me happy. And I'm not sure I'd be ready to give that up.
Yeah, I feel that on so many levels. And I think that kind of brings back to the point of the whole chat that we've had is like, you have to do what makes you feel happy. But if you're doing these things in search of that whole body acceptance that we're on about, and that, I would say that you and I have found it now.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a challenging question to think about.
It's hard. Well, and I think that's some of the hesitancy of this topic that we both had leading into the conversation, is because even as I was saying that to you, I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, but I don't want any women who have got flatter chests to be like, you should want to have a big bust or anything like that, because it's not that at all. It's got like, honestly, no one really cares what size your bust is. It's all of my thoughts and inquiries about it are literally all from a personal standpoint. So I guess that's a really good thing to clear up before we finish up, is that it doesn't matter what size your bust is. Like, this is just sharing reflections and our experiences and just our truths, I guess. We're just being open about our stories and where they are now, where they have been, and where they could go in the future.
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well.
All right, my love. Well, I will leave all of your notes in the I'll leave all of your notes in the details. I'll leave all your details in the notes. As always, it has been a fantastic chat. And if anyone wants to reach out and connect with either one of us, please do on Instagram, or I'll probably drop an email address or something. I will see. And until then, we will see you in the next one. We hope you've enjoyed this juicy chat. Thanks so much for listening in on today's episode. I hope you loved it. As always, I'd really appreciate it if you could share this with someone else. You could like or you could subscribe, as the more support we get, the more outreach we get. So in the meantime, I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful day, and we will see you in the next one.